the next talk, we have Becky on stage with an introduction to Terraform. Please welcome Becky.
So yeah, hello, welcome to my talk, Introduction to Terraform. Just quickly, who am I? I'm quite aware that I've forgotten to put my name on this slide, which is a commentary on the times we live in, I suppose. But my name is Becky. Here's sort of some details about what I've done, where I am on the internet. I work for Tails.com. You might have heard that name around a little bit this weekend. And yeah, so what is Terraform? I'm just going to start right at the complete beginning here, because this is an introduction. And basically, what is it? It's a multi-provider infrastructure as code tool from HashiCorp. HashiCorp do a variety of tools. They do Vault, they do Console, and they're really good. It's an open source tool as well. And that means it's actually got really good backing. So it's usually up to date, it's well looked after, it's well maintained. But what is it? So what Terraform is it's a tool for allowing you to write configuration files, essentially. And those configuration files can talk to many different providers. They can talk to AWS, they can talk to Google Cloud, they can talk to your DNS provider, they can talk to Cloudflare, they can talk to your domain registrar, they can talk to tons of things. And it allows you to keep track of your changes as well. So essentially, it does what you would do manually via the AWS console, except you can track it. You can put it into GitHub. You can sort of make sure that your changes are well maintained as well as automated. So I'm going to start with some of the basic concepts of Terraform. So in order to use Terraform, you're going to need to know what a provider is. Now, providers are what make Terraform tick. They are the pluggable bits of Terraform that allow you to talk to the cloud, different companies, tools, and even your databases. This is a provider. Okay, this is just a simple AWS provider here. You can see basically everything you need to know about talking to AWS is right there. As long as you've got your credentials correct, Terraform will take care of the rest here. Now, to use a provider, you just need to make a provider.tf file and list the providers that you want to use. In this example, we're just using AWS to keep it simple. Different providers can be given different configurations to allow you to do whatever it is you need to do. So if you've got a completely different configuration for Google Cloud and AWS, you can put them both in this file. And from there, you can just sort of tell Terraform to go, and it will communicate with everybody. Now, the nice thing about providers is because they're sort of created like plugins, if you can't find one you're looking for, you can actually write one yourself. Now, I've got here that it isn't as hard as it sounds, but I was trying to do it last night just to prove a point, and I couldn't get Go to work properly. So, right, so now you know what a provider is. It's kind of important to talk about states. Terraform works like other cloud orchestration tools. I don't know how many of you have used CloudFormation here. It's pretty similar to that, in that they need state. They need state to figure out what to do next. So every time you change something in your Terraform config and apply it, the new state will be written so the next time Terraform knows what things should look like. Now, of course, that means that it's not necessarily what it does look like. So it's something to be aware of. Terraform uses files in order to store state, which is pretty useful unless you manually mess with things and get your state out of sync. So has anybody here used Terraform? Has anybody here got their state out of order? Yeah. So one of the key rules of using Terraform really is just don't touch things manually if you're using Terraform. It's very, very tempting to do it, but it's very difficult to come back from that. Right, so now this is a state file, so it's just JSON. If you do get out of sync, you can actually manually edit this back into a sane state. That's incredibly tedious and actually quite dangerous. So yeah, it is possible to recover from a poor state, but just be careful. So I've talked about states and how that they're files. Now, by default, Terraform will actually store a state file locally for you if you don't set up a remote backend. Now, I found it quite difficult to find examples of remote states when I started working with Terraform. That was a fair few years ago now. But this is a remote state. Actually, this is a little outdated already. The example GitHub repo that I've set up is a bit more up to date than this, but it's very, very, very similar. So the point of the remote state is that you can tell it to go store it somewhere else. In this example, we're saving it over to S3, and we're telling it which bucket to use, what to call it, and which credentials file to use to actually talk to S3. Now, it's important to do remote states, in my opinion. I mean, for everything I do, I just use a remote state. The advantage of it is that even though it's a little bit more difficult to set up than the default local state, it's really important just to make sure you don't paint yourself into a corner. So if you can just set up a remote state, it allows you to do several things that you can't otherwise do. I mean, you don't always work on the same machine. What if you work in a team? What if you have multiple parts of your infrastructure that other teams need to own? This is where remote states really come into play, because it means that you can just push all of this stuff up into buckets, and whenever Terraform runs, it will go get all the correct states, which means it's completely up to date, but you can split up your infrastructure. You don't have to do everything at once. You can have different teams owning different things. And most importantly, if you do work on different machines, you don't have to sort of save your state file to GitHub or anything like that. So I would really, really recommend, if you're setting up Terraform for the first time, just start off with remote states. So I do talk about states, but it's really important to be careful with states. It's not really a Terraform specific problem, because people do put their secrets into GitHub if they're scripting up some of their infrastructure. But states can and will store secrets if you give it to it. So Terraform will store your secrets, and then it will push it up to your bucket, or store it locally, or wherever your state file is. So just be aware. There are various ways of managing secrets, and you should really look into doing that with Terraform, because it won't save you. It will just happily store your keys in its state files. So now we've got a provider, we've got an understanding of what states are. Now, sort of, this is where everybody is really interested in Terraform, and that is resources. So what are resources? Resources are the bits and pieces that you want to build, really. So this is an example of a resource. And this is just a simple server on AWS. This is going to build me an AWS instance on EC2. It's going to be a T2 micro. I've told it which key to use, which VPC to use, all of the user data, that sort of thing. And it's just as easy as doing this, so just define it here. You'll notice that there are provisioners here as well. Now, I'm not going to talk about those too much today, but basically what happens is Terraform can put up an EC2 instance, and then it can be told to do other things. So in this example here, we've got, oh, no. Sorry, I was looking at my screen. We've got a simple salt manifest that we're going to push up and then execute. Again, this is a little bit outdated because now that Terraform has a real provisioner for salt. So again, this is a little bit out of date. The GitHub repo is a little bit more up to date. Now, I've only put up the server instance here. There's a whole bunch of other things that need to be done. So you can see that we've got these, again, I'm moving the wrong screen around. We can see that you've got sort of variables sitting around in here. Now these are things that are coming from other parts of the setup that I have here. So you can see this security group. This is actually created somewhere else in this Terraform config. And again, you can see all of this on GitHub, but this is how you would actually define and link things together. You can even do this with states that you don't have locally. So if you pull down a different state file and one of the outputs is set for a security group, you might not have created that security group, but you can still access information about it. Okay, so Terraform's got a wonderful tool, and it's called Plan. Plan doesn't actually do anything, but it tells you what is going to happen, or what Terraform wants to do. So Plan will read your state, it will read your config and determine what it's doing, and it tells you what it's going to do next. It's a really useful tool. It won't save you from some issues, so if you have gone and manually edited something on AWS, and you've not told Terraform about it, then Plan won't save you. When you try to apply it, then it will go wrong. But it does give you a lot more confidence about what's going to happen next. So, this is probably a really bad idea, but I have got a small demo. So, this is, apologies for the really long directory name. The screen, the projector size here is like 640, so if you run Terraform Plan, it's going to refresh the state, it's going to tell you what it wants to do next. So this here says, okay, it wants to, I don't know if you can read that at the back, but it says it's planning to add 10 things, change 0, and destroy 0 things. And it tells you precisely what it's going to do. So you can see exactly what settings you've got. You can double check what you think is going to happen is actually going to happen. And these are all of the different pieces that I've got to set up here. And you can see the sample server from the example earlier. That's what it wants to do. So, whoops. So, now I set this up just in case the internet wasn't working. This is what you should have seen, and this is luckily what we did see. But that's not very fun, right? So we want to actually do something. We want to make Terraform work for us, and that's where Terraform Apply comes in. Now, again, this is Terraform Apply, and I'm just going to start building things now. So it's taking the files that I've set up, it's taking the provisioner that I've set up, and now it's going to start running. Now, again, for those of you at the back, it's now asking me, do I really want to do these things? It didn't used to do this, so I'm really, really happy that they added this. Especially with the destroy command, which I'll show you later. So yes, I'm going to say, yes, I want to do these things. I want you to go and build me my infrastructure. Now, I'm going to come back to this in a minute or three, because I've set up a SOP manifest as well. It takes a few more minutes. Terraform's not actually as slow as this is. This is me actually pushing something to the server as we go. So again, so this is what should and is happening right now. So again, you can see that it's telling you things all the way through. It's telling you, what do I want to do? It's telling you what it is going to do, and then it keeps you updated about what's happening. It tells you all of the different values that it's pushing up, and it just goes through and through and through. One of the nicer things I like about it is it's kind of continues to say, you know, I'm still doing things, I'm still working. Even if, for example, the salt provision we've got running right now, if that's taking a long time, Terraform will intermittently say, still creating this thing, still creating this thing. So you can be sure that it's actually still working and it hasn't frozen. So let's go back and see what's happening. So you can see it's still creating. There you go, it's still creating. It's telling us what's happening. I'm installing a bunch of things at the moment. I'm not sure how long this one's going to take. It should take a few minutes. But at the end of this, everything is going to be up and running and ready to go. Now, this is only halfway through. So I'll continue going while that is running. Wherever my screen's gone, yeah. So this is a more fun tool to use. And I really like using destroy, which is weird, but if you create your infrastructure, this is actually especially useful if you're trying to iterate over what you're doing. If you're not working on production, that is. Destroy will actually go and tear down everything for you. Again, it's incredibly annoying with AWS and other cloud providers. When you start setting things up, you make a VPC, you do it all through the console, and then when you actually want to get rid of it because you want to try again, you have to go find everything and remove everything and all the bits and pieces. Now, because with Terraform you have to tell Terraform all the things you want it to do, well, it will go and do the opposite, the exact opposite, and it will do it way faster than you can ever do it. It'll be more accurate as well. And the destroy command is really fun to use, but it's also really useful if you've got everything in a Terraform config. Now, plan destroy. This is also a very, very useful point to know. You can ask Terraform to tell you what it plans to destroy. If you have any data at all that you do not want to lose, always run plan destroy first. Double check, triple check, because you can't get your data back. Your infrastructure, Terraform will rebuild that for you, but if your data is there and suddenly it's gone, you cannot get that back. So please, please, please make sure that you know what's going to happen before you run destroy on anything. Now, I do believe that, again, Terraform will ask you prior. It didn't used to, so you had to be really careful when running destroy. But I do believe that now, these days, all of the Terraform versions that are current ask you, are you sure you want to do this thing? Let's go back. So you can see that the server has been created, and we've just finished. So I'll push this up a bit so you can see apply is completed. We have added 10 resources. We have not changed any, we've not destroyed any. And I've told Terraform to give me an output for my instance IP. Now, outputs are really useful for two reasons. One, you can see things that you want to know after you've built your infrastructure. But secondly, these outputs can be used by other things. So if you have another team that might need to know about a security group you've just created, put it in an output, because then they can actually access that as a variable within their configuration. And it's a super useful tool to have, because you can just make everything modular. You can have different teams doing different things. You can have a sysops team doing a whole bunch of networking work, and all you need to do is get the VPC as a variable from them so that you can do your own setup. It's a super useful tool to have. And I really recommend using outputs as much as you can. It doesn't really hurt to do it, but again, make sure there are no secrets in there. So, like an IP address. But now, I'm going to destroy what I just did, just to show you what happens. And apologies to those of you at the back once again, but yeah, it's coming up now, but it's refreshing the state, so it's finding out what it just did. It says, oh, I got things there. I want to get rid of them now. It is asking me if I want to destroy them, so I'm going to say yes. And hope that that really wasn't production. And it's just getting rid of everything there now. Destroy is pretty quick as well, so again, yeah. Hitting Control-C halfway through usually doesn't help either. I say this from experience, I'm afraid. It's not very fun when you go, oh my god, that was the database. it going to come back soon? This is usually much quicker. The gateway tends to take a long time, it seems. So, yeah, I'll leave that going. But yes, that is this story. So we've managed to set up a provider. We've managed to set up a server, actually create the server, and destroy the server, all in a 20-minute talk, which kind of shows you the power of Terraform right there. It's very fast to do things. It's very useful, and that's it really. There's a quick whirlwind tour of Terraform. This is a GitHub repo I was talking about earlier. I encourage everybody to go have a look at it, and it should be a full Terraform setup, so you should be able to run it. You'll have to make your own tweaks because I'm not giving you my AWS keys. I work for Tails.com. We are hiring. We have office dogs, and we also have stickers, and some month free for any of you guys who have dogs. Come down the front and get some cards. I'm taking questions, and that's it.
Thank you very much, Becky. We have time for a few questions.
Hello, thank you, great talk. I have an Ansible playbook to provision my own machine. So 2 questions. Can I use Terraform, and should I use Terraform to do the same?
I'm a fan of Terraform, so I'm going to say yes. It was seriously like I've done the same sort of thing with SaltStack in the past. Moved to Terraform. Yeah, you can move back and forwards. You can use Ansible and Terraform together. They do play well. So yeah, definitely.
The cloud providers have their own sort of equivalent to this. So Google has Deployment Manager. Does Terraform use those under the covers, or does it manage all its API calls itself?
So I'm going to say it manages everything itself, but bear in mind that anybody can write a provider. So some of them may actually be using those tools, but for things like AWS, I know for certain that it's not using CloudFormation under the hood. It's its own thing, and it's just using the APIs. That's pretty common to use the APIs. Yeah.
Thanks for the talk. I have a question about state management and remote state management using, I saw the example, GitHub repo or Git repo. Is that
Sorry?
the the remote state management?
Yeah.
Is that through a Git repository?
I've not tried it with a Git repository. I'm not sure if you can. I'm using S3 mostly
Okay.
for my remote state. I do believe you can push into databases these days as well.
Okay. Then the sort of the real question is, how do you avoid race conditions of multiple engineers pushing out at the same time?
That's a really good question. I've not worked in a place where you have that happening too much. So the answer is we should try it and find out. Yeah.
Not on production.
Just before I ask my question to the gentleman before, the remote state uses a locking mechanism, so it will bail out if someone else is using it.
There you go.
My question was about secrets. So I've tried using Terraform a little bit, and say you create a database, it asks you to provide a master username and password. That's now living in the configuration, it's now living in the state. Obviously you can say protect access to the bucket remotely, which is an advantage to use it, but I'd like to avoid having that username and password in the configuration in the Terraform file to begin with. Have you encountered that problem, and how have you attempted to solve it?
I've not really solved it in a production environment myself, but I know that Terraform works pretty well with a lot of the secret management systems. So Vault, AWS has a bunch of things that you can use. I would encourage to use those so that you don't actually save your secrets there. Yeah, that's what I would suggest. There's a few techniques around it. The Terraform Reddit subreddit is pretty good for that sort of information, actually.
Let's thank Becky one more time.